This is Grind Season. I'm Jason Smith, one of your co-hosts here on the Grind Season podcast and Odyssey podcast. Also co-host of the Jason John Midday Radio Show here in Memphis. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Jason Smith 929. The guy next to me is Anthony Sain. He is the tribal chief of Grizz Twitter, man who's covered the Grizz for the last 10 seasons. If you're a fan of the Grizzlies, you need to be following him. You can do so on Twitter at Sain Asylum. Brother Sain, how we feeling coming in today?
Man, I got some mixed emotions, man. I'm literally fresh off of watching Ja's press conference, his reintroductory press conference to the media, to the city since his return. And I don't know. I haven't looked at the rundown. I just hope that's not the first thing we're talking about. But if so, I'll be ready for it for sure.
No, I saw that you tweeted something right before we started here about coming off that press about some of the questions being asked.
Man, you know how we get down.
I'm highly interested to ask you about some of the questions asked to him, and sort of I can feel that energy coming from that side of the podcast. So I'll be excited to get into that with you. First things first, you can hear Grind Season, of course, twice per week on the free Odyssey app. This will be our first of this week. Grizz go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, obviously, this week. This is Tuesday. So we'll have another one for you on Thursday after they take on Houston for the first time. Of course, you can find our podcast on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts, including on Spotify. It gets there pretty quickly. Just search for Grind Season with a SZN on Grind Season. On this edition, yes, the aforementioned Ja Morant. After an 8-game suspension, he's back with the team. Could be back on the court as soon as tomorrow, hopefully against Houston, looks like. In the meantime, Grizzlies have gotten hot without him, have won 6 of 7 after win over Dallas last night. Grizz will be back in action, like we said, on Wednesday. Want to ask Sain, how much better are we feeling? You know, the Grizzlies have won 6 of 7 here. How much better are we feeling about, this team's chances in terms of this season, what it could do in the postseason, now that you've got it playing well and with Ja Morant soon to be back on the court? Maybe things haven't changed. I have to say they have, because I think you'd say 2 weeks ago when we didn't know when Ja was getting back, when he learned the news about Steven Adams being gone possibly the rest of the regular season, frankly, didn't know how the rest of the regular season was going to finish out. Now you seem to be in a little bit more stable place. We'll get an idea of what we think is possible. And then ask Sain, too, what we've been most encouraged by during this stretch of successful play, having won 6 of 7. Santi Aldama has been good. Jaren Jackson, we're seeing the most consistently good offensive stretch from Jaren Jackson that we've seen for his entire career. 4 straight games over 25. So a lot to discuss from the Grizzlies' current run, 6 of 7, like we said. We are going to get into Ja Morant because, as Sain said, he spoke for the first time publicly since returning to the team on Monday. Obviously sat out that game, which we figured was going to happen, and is eligible to return for one of these 2 Houston games. But Taylor Jenkins said there's a chance he could come off the bench. Some of the questions today asked of Ja Morant, I think, rubbed my friend here a little certain way.
Hey,
like we said, we're going to give him a segment because it just essentially happened within the last couple of hours. So we're going to give Sain a segment to cool down as we sort of look at what we've liked about the doing. And then segment 2, we'll talk about some of those questions to Ja. And then, what we're expecting of Ja Morant. Dylan Brooks has said he expects a more consistent, different Ja out there for these last, 10, 11 games of the regular season. What are we sort of expecting from Ja, who did, by the way, apparently in the team meeting on Monday in which he apologized, offered to come off the bench. Taylor Jenkins has said maybe he might the first couple of games. We'll see. Is that even necessary? Man, what's something we'll get into. And then finally, last segment, who brought the seasoning? We've got a lot to pick from. 3 straight wins for the Grizzlies since we last spoke at San Antonio. Came back from 29 down, franchise record. Then you beat the Warriors handily, especially with a strong fourth quarter in which Dylan Brooks was outstanding in that game. And then, of course, you get the win over Dallas on Monday. So a lot to choose from in terms of who brought the season. So that's the setup. That's today's show. But Sain, we'll start here. Like we said, 3 straight wins for the Grizz, 6 of 7. You've gone 6 and 3 without Ja Morant. It's good we're not going to have to keep up with that record sans Ja Morant here much longer. Right. But 6 and 3 with them. And you got to think about it. It's 10 and 8 on the season. Last year, I think they were 20 and 5 without Ja. But they started 4 of 7. You're 6 and 1 without him since. So this team is, you could say, you faced Dallas 3 times the last 10 games. some of the competition, the Spurs, you could sit up here and say, well, they haven't played anybody, but clearly they found a nice little formula without Ja during this stretch last night. Jaren Jackson, 28 points, including a big layup there with 17 seconds left. So before we get to Ja saying his return, a lot to break down there. Just what's stood out to you most about this stretch here? Again, 6 of 7. Jaren playing well. Santi last night. Bane, has been there for the most part pretty consistently. What's encouraged you the most about where the Grizzlies are at right now, having taken back sole position of second place from Sacramento?
Just their resistance to lose, to give up, to allow the outside distractions, allow some of the bad play. This has been a heck of a week, man. These guys have had a crazy run over the last few games, some super fun games we've witnessed since the last time we talked. You started off with the game against the Spurs. You were down by 29 points. I'm sitting here watching that game, multitasking at night while the Tigers were playing. University of Memphis was playing NCAA tournament game. I'm going back and forth. And I was like, okay, this looks like it's going to be an ugly night for the city. But to see the Grizzlies come back from that 29-point victory, chipping away,
yep,
and pulling that game out, I'm ready to say that was a totally momentum swinging game where that type of game can swing a season. And I think that game, to see that team rally together, Tyus Jones had some things to say, that they had a tough conversation in the locker room at halftime. I would have loved to be in the locker room to hear what that conversation was. That he said, guys, said some things need to be said. But whatever it was, I think it sparked something for the season, because you've seen guys play totally different since then. You've seen Dylan really hone in and play some great basketball on both sides of the ball. You've seen Tyus been a very, very good leader with the ball in his hands. You've seen Jaren Jackson turn into a monster of a man offensively, where he's playing like he's got a point to prove. He's playing like a guy who, when you start off the season and you say, hey, I want to be an all-star this year, that's how Jaren Jackson's playing with the all-star bid already under the tuck. He's playing like a man on a mission to do something. And we definitely have seen him do that for sure. That big win against the Spurs, like I said, I think kicked off a lot of momentum. Then you come and you get the boogeyman, the monster in the closet, the bully on the schoolyard, the Golden State Warriors, the defending NBA champions. You beat them handily at home, pretty much in an embarrassing fashion, beating them the entire game. You get Dallas last night down by, I think, as many as 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were down in the fourth quarter against this team, and you made a tremendous run, chipping away, like I said, bully balling this team. Jaren Jackson Jr. coming in and scoring the bucket to put the game away after having 5 fouls, coming in with those 5 fouls and just being a leader. Just to see this team continue to do that. And now you get 2 games at home against probably the worst team in the NBA. You get Ja Morant back, so it's going to be a party, or dare I say a parade, in my city tomorrow with Ja Morant hits the court. It's just great times right now, man. Did you feel like before they go out next Sunday against the Hawks on the road, if you can get these 2 games under your belt, that will be 8 of your last 9 games. You've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight wins. I think that good things are here to come, and I'm glad to see how this team has rallied around each other without Ja, without Steven Adams, and without Brandon Clark.
Saying, the regular season can be a grind, and we are getting down. You're past the point of the dog days where we're 11 games left. I mean, it's go time here now, dress rehearsal time. But did it feel like to you that with where this franchise was, if we're going back to winning the 6 or 7, that stretch started with the first win over Golden State that you handled. You get them 2 out of the, two out of these 6 have been against Golden State. Were those wins important, whether symbolically, whatever else, with where they had you? Draymond does the podcast, says we beat you 6 out of the last 8 times. Like we've had your number. I wonder if the 2 wins over them, because the wins over Dallas, I mean, all of them without Luka, 2 of the 3 without Kyrie too. I have a hard time putting a ton of stock in them, although I'm with you. The fortitude they showed in rallying both times, doing it against the Spurs, you like. But with the Golden State Warriors, with those games, that felt important. That felt whether it was just sending a statement to Golden State themselves that, look, y'all don't have our numbers like you think we do, or for their own confidence saying that, after where they had been with Golden State and having their number, those 2 in particular felt maybe more important than the others. Am I putting too much stock in them, or would you buy it?
No, because I totally agree with you. That Warriors team, beating that team, because there are a lot of teams like you can look at Dallas and say, hey, they didn't have Luka or they didn't have Kyrie, even though it's a whole nother discussion on how good their team actually is with both of those guys because they've got a losing record and
Right.
both of those guys are playing
No,
together.
you're right. It is.
That's a whole nother discussion. But that Golden State Warriors team, that's the team that's probably going to the playoffs. You know, that's pretty much all who they are. They had a stretch where they didn't have Steph Curry. Steph's been back for a while now. They're still not a good team. I think they're borderline below 500, if not below 500. You may get Wiggins back from the playoffs. We don't really know what's going on around that situation outside of speculation, but that's the Warriors team you're going to see in the playoffs, and that's who they are. And we're beating those guys shorthanded without Steven Adams. You might not get Steven Adams back, but you know you'll have Ja Morant back. And just to beat that boogeyman, there were moments where Jaren Jackson Jr. looked dominant against Draymond Green. There were moments where Dillon Brooks was looking more than capable of shutting down Steph Curry. I mean, he was playing very well.
He did. Dillon Brooks shined in those two matchups.
Yeah, Klay Thompson wasn't really giving you anything. That's who the Warriors are, man. And they can throw up their 1, 2, 3, 4 rings, all those type of things. But we may be the team to end that streak in your season. If it comes down to the playoffs in a 2-7 or a 3-6 matchup. So I think beating that team, the team that you know you may be playing in the first round, and handling them the way that you have, and dealing with those mental demons, like you said, with this team that you know has had an edge on you, especially the Jaren Draymond stuff and the Dillon, Klay Thompson, all those type of things. That I think that's a really big deal to come out there and beat that team the way that you did.
What again, you know, and we've done this, you know, whether it's weighing in every couple of weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, but just in terms of now that they've found some stability without Steven Adams, because we still don't know on him in terms of for playoffs and everything else. Have your expectations at all changed? Are they the same? Are you more disappointed now because they found some stability? Ja's coming back. If they did go out in a first round series, than you necessarily would have been. Has anything changed about what you expect from this team in terms of your postseason expectations for this Grizzlies team?
Looking at the rest of the West, my expectations have increased. Of course, I think it depends on the matchup. I'm a little more worried about Dallas than I would be Golden State. I know that sounds crazy. You're talking about the defending champions. I just think we just don't know what Dallas is. We just haven't seen whatever they're going to be going into the playoffs.
It's true. We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't really know. Even with them being 2-4 with Kyrie and Luka, they really haven't had many games together. So they may turn into a total different team in the playoffs. I don't trust their defense at all. I think they're super fraudulent. They're bigs. Christian Wood he'll fall apart in the playoffs. He really got into Jaren's skin last night. He's not built for anything real like for the playoffs. I don't think so. But I do think that with the West being all over the place like it is, a fully healthy, ready to go Grizzlies team with an engaged Ja Morant, you'd assume from some of the comments we heard from Dillon Brooks, Dillon playing lockdown defense, being more efficient offensively like we've seen in the last few games, Jaren Jackson Jr. being a monster, Desmond Bane showing himself to be capable of being another number 2 scorer that can put the ball on the ground, hit a mid-range shot. And if you can get that 3-pointer dropping, you know what you're going to get from him. And if you get Steven Adams back, there's nothing stopping this team from making a very deep run in the West and possibly going to the finals. So I'm not going to say I expect that, but my enthusiasm or my likelihood of those type of things happening feel a lot better than they felt even a couple of weeks ago, especially with the emergence of 2 guys on this team, 3 guys that we, you know, Santi Aldama, who's been incredible as a backup big. We saw the Jaren Santi lineup yesterday a lot down the stretch, and it was freaking phenomenal. They look like Powell and Kevin Garnett on the same team back in the early 2000s.
Hold on now. Hold on. Ideal, was it 22 and 14 from Santi though?
Yeah. Darren had 28 and 6 or something like that.
In 23 minutes because of the foul. Yeah.
So I mean, like, I'm really not that fraud. They look like KG and Powell looked when they were young. But you got Santi doing his thing. He's rolling. And the play of Luke Kennard, who has looked very good with the ball in his hands, being kind of a tertiary, I think that's the right word, ball handler on the team, as well as a shooter, like you know. And also Roddy's been playing very well as a 3-4, 4-3 type player, just being a bully, getting to the basket, drawing contact. His jumper isn't falling. When his jumper falling, it's definitely icing on the cake. But if anything, he can bully you. He can get to the rim. And I think if you get something out of those guys come playoff time, this could be a team, like I said, that could come out of the West.
Well, and then if you got it, just I know we've talked about it, but it just looks, because you're now a game ahead of Sacramento, sole possession of second. You've got the second easiest schedule the rest of the way. These final 11. If you can hold on to that 2 seed, it's home court through the first 2 rounds. Right. This team is 30-5 at FedEx Forum.
Right.
It's the best home record in the league. Right. And so you know, whether it's a Golden State or whoever comes through, even a Dallas.
You really need to do whatever you need to do to get that 2 spot.
Yeah, you hold.
Do we get Sacramento again?
It's such an advantage. Now that series is done tied 2-2.
It's tied 2-2. Okay.
And that's why I'm pretty sure you do not, at this point, you don't want to finish tied with them, because they get the tiebreaker, because it goes regular season head to head, and then division winner, and then it goes to conference. And I think both teams going to win their division, so you'd go to conference record. And I think Sacramento would have you. Conference. Right now, they're 27.
A little more fine in the West than we are. So
yeah, they're 27-15, and the Grizzlies have 19 losses in conference. They're 26-19.
Right.
So it's a little tight. You don't want to be finished in a tie with them. It's from as far as I can tell. That said, though, man, if you can lock in and get that 2 seed, it's such an advantage for a team with the best home record, literally, in the NBA. Man, it feels like every single one of those. Well, most of the guys that are in the rotation right now. It's just true. They're playing so well in these games at FedEx Forum, man. Now 30-5 for the Grizzlies at FedEx Forum. It's they're in line to break the franchise record for home wins in a season. Looks like they'll do it. Nothing to think they won't, especially with what they've got left on the schedule the rest of the way. Again, second easiest schedule the rest of the regular season. So Grizzlies certainly in a good spot right now, and feels like they can be in even a better one with Ja Morant coming back. Before we get into that, obviously you listen to the Grind Season podcast on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, that Odyssey app, super convenient, easy to download. Get that, hit subscribe for us, hit that likes for us. We certainly appreciate all of you all for supporting us here so far as we approach the end of the regular season. Now, Ja Morant spoke to the media today for the first time since returning from the 8-game suspension imposed on him after he flashed the gun on Instagram. There's been a lot of apologizing. There's been a lot of taking responsibility on the part of Ja Morant. He started the process with the Jalen Rose individual interview we've talked about. Today was his first day in front of local media. Had a chance to ask him whatever they wanted. I had a list of questions already sort of going into this. But like Sain touched on as we got into this, it wrapped up not too long before we started recording. I saw Sain tweeting about it. Some of the questions today of Ja Morant asked of him, you thought crossed the line?
I mean, cross the line is kind of relative. I'll just say this, Jason. I remember a few years ago, maybe, how long has Ja been in the league? 4 years, right? Yes. So probably 5 years ago, there's a situation when Marc Gasol had put out a trade. It had been rumored that Marc Gasol had a trade request out. You remember that when that first came out? Marc Gasol soon after that. You know what? I'm wrong. This was during the Fizdale stuff, I believe.
Okay.
You remember, anyway, Mark had a private media session where he sat down with who he wanted to sit down with, and he talked to who he wanted to talk to about what he wanted to talk about. And there were no cameras. There was no recording. Guys would kind of put out what they talked about, but it wasn't like for super public consumption. Guys could get their quotes and share their quotes or whatever, but they couldn't. It wasn't like it was recorded. I'm really kind of disturbed with the Memphis Grizzlies first, because I know that they have the power to kind of control narratives. I've seen them do that too many times with us, with media guys, media types. And it was too soon to me. I was looking at Ja Morant be physically uncomfortable and verbally uncomfortable. He literally said, Jeff Calkins asked a question. He said, well, how did it feel getting back out there? He said, man, being honest with you, it wasn't the best feeling. When I came out with the team yesterday, it wasn't the best feeling, and I felt uncomfortable. And he's like, I feel that same way right now. And at that point, the whole thing should have stopped. You know what I mean? It's like, why are we doing this? Are we doing this to, are we doing this to interrogate Ja Morant? Are we doing this to encourage him? Are we doing this to get new information? Because once he says, you know what, I really felt uncomfortable coming out the team yesterday. Honestly, I feel the same way now. That's when my good friend Jason Wallace, who used to be the Grizzlies PR guy, would come in and say, any more questions, anything else, and then we shut it down. I don't know if you've seen the interview yet.
A little bit of it.
And the reason why I say it probably should have been more of a private thing is a lot of people in the city, and I'll be honest, I'm not saying this to ruffle any feathers or to pick on anybody. A lot of these people just aren't good at what they do. They just don't ask good questions, and they don't have any ounce of compassion. The human element is pulled out of a lot of things people do. They're strictly doing the job, and they're trying to get a quote for their radio show, their podcast, their publication, whatever they're doing. And it was just a lot of insensitive questions. And I'll just be honest, stupid questions that were coming from people. Ja Morant had to remind people, I've already answered this before on the Jalen Rose interview. The Jalen Rose interview was very controlled. It was with somebody Ja trusted that he probably chose, handpicked to do his interview with them. And a lot of the questions that people were asking were questions that were already addressed. They asked him questions about the Indiana incident, questions about the incident with the young man that was 17 years old on the basketball court. And Ja said, again, there are certain things I can't speak about those incidents. Somebody asked Ja, why can't you? And Ja had to say, do you know how the legal system works? You know what I mean? It's like, that's just a very novice question to ask. And Ja, to me, did not seem ready to be asked the level. If somebody's saying, I was in a counseling facility for 10 days on how to deal with stress, and a week later you're standing in front of a podium in front of a media scrum, that may not have been the best environment for someone who you're saying is just left out of counseling a week ago on how to deal with stress. And then somebody asked the question about alcohol came up. Me and you both were here on this podcast last week. I stated, if Ja's having problems dealing with stress, alcohol seems to be one of those unhealthy or not the best ways that he's dealing with things. He reiterated, no, I did not go to a alcohol rehab facility, which I believe to be true. But I do believe that one of the things he was stressed out about, one of the things that he's using as a wrong way to deal with stress is probably alcohol. But he reiterated he was going to counseling about dealing with stress. That's cool. He had to reiterate this twice to them. The question also came up about is this something that's ongoing? Is this something that you'll continue to do going forward? Josh said, yes, it will be. This is something that I'm not done. I got valuable tools, but I'll continue to get counseling to deal with these things. It's an ongoing process that I'm still doing at this point. I'm sure there's something he's doing remotely via Zoom or something. The question comes at the end of the press conference. Hey, so Ja, are you good now? Do you think this is finished? And John's like, dude, I literally just told y'all at the beginning of the show.
Someone who had not listened or came in.
Like if y'all have the decency to, because this isn't on coming back from a knee injury. You know what I mean? This isn't I had COVID. You know what I mean? Like, this is, the man said he was out because of a mental health issue. And y'all are asking him have enough decency, have enough like respect to ask questions that aren't putting them in that aren't adding to the issue. Somebody asked the question, will your family be sitting courtside? Why wouldn't they? And it's a super insensitive crowd. And if you look at the people who are answering the question and listen to the people that answer the questions, they really weren't the type of people that need to be around Ja asking them those type of questions. And I'll let y'all interpret it however you want. But it's the same feeling I had when you're watching Undisputed and you're seeing what's his name? I can't think of his name. Skip Bayless, who panders black culture all the time, but then wants to pinpoint rap lyrics to try to destroy Ja Morant. And Uncle Ruckus, Uncle Shannon Sharp gets up there and he just doesn't say anything to defend Ja Morant, who's getting destroyed by Skip Bayless because of rap lyrics, which are also rap lyrics that Ja says the team says after every victory. They're literally talking about, it's a parade in my city. Like, if we win a championship, guess what you get in your city? A fucking parade. You know what I mean? So these are the things that Ja Morant's being vilified on for today. And the local media comes in asking these ridiculous questions that have already been answered. And I'm like, man, what are y'all doing? Like, and like I said, I blame the Memphis Grizzlies. I think this should have been a much more controlled environment, a much less stressful environment for someone who said he was dealing with stress issues. I'm disappointed with them as an organization because I think that the way that you can't put them in a regular scrum with people who are quote chasing. You know what I mean? And I just didn't like it, bro. I know you say you haven't. You say you haven't seen it, right?
I've seen parts of it. I haven't watched the video in its
entirety. It's just really you can visibly see that Ja was uncomfortable with some of the lines.
Well, I saw the quote where he said, and I heard him say he was uncomfortable, talking about getting back yesterday at first with the team, some of that stuff.
But he also said, I feel that way literally right
answering these questions like right now.
Yeah, because it was you could tell he's been agitated. And here's the thing too. I'm not trying to handle Ja with peg gloves. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't like, he shouldn't have to answer any questions or but this is a different type of situation, bro. This isn't like, this isn't COVID. This isn't an ankle injury.
No,
he was away for the team from a mental health issue. And he just wasn't ready for that environment. And I think the Grizzlies could have and should have handled that situation a lot better. Let Ja pick who he wants to talk to in Memphis media. We did it for Marc Gasol on strictly a PR move about him getting into it with the coach and the coach getting fired. So for this situation, which I think is even way more massive than the situation with Marc Gasol, it should have been in a more controlled environment. It was really a bad look. It made Ja look and feel bad, and it made the Memphis media look bad to me, and it made the Memphis Grizzlies organization look, I was just be honest, incompetent. That they should have had that in a much more controlled environment.
I'll say that initially when you were making this point, I was disagreeing with you in the sense that I did feel like it was a little bit okay saying, well, he's got to come out and answer some questions. And what you can't have to me is with all due respect to the job the Grizzlies do with their in-house media, something like that where it's all softballs. That isn't necessarily the sort of accountability that was necessary. I do think they had to open it up for local media to be able to come in and answer questions. I think that's the way in a situation like this that you handle it. However, in listening to sort of what you're saying, if you've got guys out there asking questions that are repeating something that Ja said or they clearly haven't listened to it, if you've got non-pros out there, you should be protecting Ja from that. So the more I listened to what you said and the more I thought about, in a situation like this, you could have taken one representative from each media outlet that you're comfortable with, that you understand isn't just in this for the quote or a rating or whatever else. And listen, I know Doc Holliday is like that. I know he cares. I know you all have had back and forth, but Jeff Calkins cares about what happens in the. My point is he covers that team close enough that if you want him to be your representative from the Daily Memphian or Drew Hill, my point is you've got professionals in there with Ja that understand that, to your point, this isn't coming back from COVID or an injury, and this is a delicate situation. That said, I do think there's a responsibility on the part of the Grizzlies to make him available to local media. However, like you point out, if you've got non-pros in there asking questions that are repeats or whatever else, it gets to a point. Now you're doing a disservice to the guy that you put in front of him, and I think you had to, but you're doing a disservice to him, making him repeat everything else.
Yeah, so I'm not, man. It was
I feel you on the comfort level of Ja in terms of you could see he's uncomfortable. He's saying he's uncomfortable, brother, but this was always coming at some point.
For sure.
And maybe it was too soon when we're talking about he was just supposed to be dealing with stress issues. You put him in what could be a potentially stressful situation. Maybe it's too soon, but at some point they were going to have to put him out there to answer questions from media outside their own, just so it's not a. It's
when you say by your own, you mean Grind City Media. You mean their internal media.
Because in that sense, again, it's more like the Jalen interview. You're controlling the narrative, and you don't have a,
But that's what I'm saying, though, Smith.
An objective set of questions. You're in that case, you might be. I mean, again, you might be. You're playing. I mean, what are we talking about here? The same people that signed the Grind City Media checks, Robert Parrish is signing Ja's check, so they're gonna. It might not be a deal where they're looking at, that point is I don't think you're necessarily getting the same set of questions because again, they're going out of their way to make Ja as comfortable as possible and make that narrative as positive as possible.
But I'm saying you could have had whoever, like you could have had whoever you decide to bring it. Like when Mark had his thing, Mark was in the room with, a lot of guys. He was in the room with, like you said, it was more of a hand-picked group of people. They were asking him real questions, but it wasn't him standing up against a wall surrounded by cameras and cell phones in his face. He was sitting down at a table with Memphis media members. They were taking their notes. He was asking whatever question they wanted to ask, and he answered them. And it was a more comfortable, controlled situation. And just that this wasn't a regular media scrum type situation. It was goofy looking, man. And I didn't like any of it really. Shout out to Jeff. Jeff's fine. Some of Jeff's questions were weird to me. Jeff asked a question about will your family be there at the game? I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, I ain't here to be Mr. Defense of Jeff Calkins, but is that not something you're watching to see? Is that not something we're talking about? We talked about, how much was his support system going to change to help him, and would that not be included in the conversation? Whether it's sitting,
he can't pick a new mom and dad though, Smith. His mom and dad are who they are. You know what I mean? He can't,
But the antics themselves, the getting into it with players or whatever else, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's something we're gonna be watching to see because, like I don't know, man. I feel you on some of the questions that be rubbed the wrong way. I will say though, man, that being uncomfortable is,
it's gonna have to be a moment where he's got to be uncomfortable.
Growth process saying was always going to be Ja being uncomfortable, asking questions from someone, and whether those questions were fair, whether they rubbed you the wrong way or not. This was always going to be a part of the process. For growth, you got to get uncomfortable sometimes, and so as much as I'm just like you. I want to protect Ja as much as possible because you want the best for him and what that means for this city. Like he has put himself in this position to be uncomfortable right now.
And he admitted that. He said that
it was easier to do. It's one thing to do with your teammates. It starts uncomfortable. Man, once them games get rolling, you're cheering for them and everything. You're back in there telling them, hey, you'll come off the bench. It's kind of done. It's a whole nother thing when you're answering the questions of the world. And that was the next step in this process. So,
right, for sure.
What I firmly agree with you on is the non-pros in there, the amateurs in there should not have been left to their
it was silly, man.
And insert anything because like you made the best point. This isn't an injury or COVID or something he's coming back, coming back from. And so it's a relatively
for him to initially say that this is an ongoing process. I still have to get help. I'm still getting treatment, whatever. And then to come back and say, man, so are you good now? Do you think? I mean, it's stupid, man.
Yeah, now that's completely insensitive. Right, I'm with you 100% on that.
Somebody was like, "Whose idea was this for you to go?" Like, what does that matter, man? Like, we know when and why this happened. So, I don't know, man. It's like when you're like I said, this ain't an injury, bro. This ain't like, I twisted my ankle. It's a totally different return to the team, and I just think it should have been handled in a totally different. It's the environment of it all. Seeing him pinned up against the wall, because those scrums can be if you're just a regular player in a regular interview, you're literally standing with your back up against the wall with people literally in your face, with light shining in your face. All you see is phones and microphones.
Bro, we've been doing this for years. Like, why do Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, all these folks have
that, Smith, but I'm just saying,
James, like
if you know the man is saying, look, man, I'm fresh out of dealing with some shit because I ain't right. I ain't been right. Why? Like, is he ready? Was he ready for that? You understand? I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree. He's got to deal with it eventually. But it just looked horrible today.
Bro, nobody said that. No, I'm gonna be careful. Nobody said guys dealing with mental issues like we were talking about with Ben Simmons. Technically, we had to all be. We said dealing with stress, bro.
That's another issue.
Like, I mean, we're not talking about.
I get what you're saying, though.
I don't, and I realize that includes some mental health aspects, but I don't know, man. He was always going to have to come back and answer some questions, and some of them were going to be, particularly, have the potential to rub him the wrong way, rub others the wrong way. Again saying, here's the thing: you knock it out, you're done with that.
Yeah, you're done with that.
Yeah. You don't have to do another round of that. Now, will a question or two come in? Yeah, but slowly but surely they will. This too shall pass. It will, so long as he shows the growth, doesn't have any incidents. It'll pass. And it'll be a distant memory. And maybe in the end, something that's actually something that actually leads to some change that's good. Dylan Brooks, to get back to it, said he expects a different job, says a more consistent job. In terms of once he's back with this team, you expect anything to be different? And did him offering, to his team to come off the bench, whether that was, hey, I'm just trying to say the right things, or he really feels that way. Taylor Jenkins kept the possibility open during the presser, said he might come off the bench for the first couple of games. Just what you're expecting from Ja Morant as he comes back. You see, I mean, it's hard to think he's going to come back and just try to take over Jack 22 shots his first game, right? You figure you get a Ja that's easing his way back in and looking to,
I don't think the not starting thing is real. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see it. I don't really think it matters too much. Like I said,
does it not matter with the only 11 games in the regular season left though?
Yeah,
don't start getting some Rick Purcell in and get him to a. I wouldn't play with it too much. Him come up.
He I don't know, man. He just looks so strange today. I don't really know. I can't really get a grasp of what's really up with him. You know what I mean? So I'm still.
Well, last night he looked normal, right? The energy.
He was out there doing his thing.
You're talking about today with the presser. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think that's real. I think he's probably going to start. I'm sure he's ready to go because here's the thing too. If his first moments back with the team was yesterday, and we're already talking about he'll play Wednesday. It must mean he's pretty fine. I mean, it doesn't mean he's okay physically or mentally to play. So I think he'll probably start. I don't think they're gonna miss the opportunity to give him the pregame introduction in the starting lineup. I don't think they'll miss that opportunity. I don't know. Maybe Ja may be thinking they're playing so well without me. I don't want to mess that up. Let me kind of get a feel for how things are going before I just jump in. I don't know. I don't really know where this. I'm trying to figure out where this coming from. More so rather than not whether it's real or not, especially them saying that Ja said it. I didn't see the Dylan Brooks interview at all.
He said he told him hell no, that no, you got to come, you got to start for us. We need you talking on folks running stuff in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I got to see that.
You know, whether it was real from Ja or not, I think again, even if it was just words, I think you appreciate it probably because let's be real too. There were the reports that he was being that he was being called out. So essentially in team meetings on the road before all this goes down, and you're probably feeling a certain kind of way about coming back. You're probably very sincere in that you've been gone from this time, and now you see a team that's won 6 or 7 without you. I think it's whether he meant it or not. Whether it's just
something to it. Here's something else too, Smith. Something we talked about. We've been talking about this for months. Even before all this stuff happened with Ja and the whole incident with the gun, or even a lot of the stuff we've seen drama-wise, Ja just hasn't looked like Ja. All-Star game, he looked like he wanted no part of any of that. You know what I mean? His countenance just hasn't looked right over the last month or so. Me and you've talked a lot about that. And in the interview today, he kind of talked about how the stuff that's going on, whether that's the Indiana thing, the stuff with the kid, all those things. He said, he basically said that I've gone through a lot. I'm trying to process in my personal life. There's a lot going on, and he hasn't looked the same. I'm sure that's probably led to, if he's stressed out, if he's dealing with all these different things, he might not have been the best teammate over the last few months as well. You know what I mean? And I kind of alluded to that when I was talking about maybe the team might be a little easier to coach with Ja Morant being out of the rotation. Maybe he's coming in completely humble. Maybe part of his apologizing to his team is not just for the off the court incident, not just for being away from the court, but maybe apologizing for how he may have been over the last few months. Because Ja just hadn't been the same to me. And I'm not saying that reactionary, because this is something we've said for weeks before this stuff came out. I'm looking forward to him being back. I wanted to be in the building. I won't be able to. Gabe has a basketball game that same day, and I won't be able to get down there in time. So, but I'm just excited to have him back, man. I'm still processing the interviews. I'm going to watch all this stuff over again. Maybe I'll change my mind about how I feel about a lot of it today. But, I'm just excited to see him back on the court, man, whether that's starting, coming off the bench, just ready to see 12 back out there.
Yeah, well, the basketball is the start back to normalcy. The more games he's under his belt, the farther this feels behind you, or the more it feels behind you. So it's all part of the process. Today was going to happen one way or the other. Although where you've convinced me is that they could have handled this better in the sense that you don't have some amateurs out there in a time where Ja's
all them folks that was acting the crazy stuff was not amateurs though. It was some usual suspects out there. It was just people that just a little out of touch. It was people that were a lot more like Skip Bayless than they were like DeMichael Cole. I'll just say that. So it was just, I just didn't like a lot of the energy that was coming from behind some of the questions I feel.
Now on to our final segment of Grind Season, which of course you can get twice per week on the Odyssey app. We'll have an edition for you out tonight, Tuesday night. We'll hopefully have another edition out for you on Thursday night. Grizzlies go Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week. So that's why we're Tuesday, Thursday. Got Houston at the house on Wednesday and on Friday. So should be hopefully the Grizzlies moving to 32-5 at home. Saying, like we said, we got a nice sample size to choose from. 3 games since we last spoke last week when the Grizzlies were coming off a loss to Miami. You mentioned the win over San Antonio, historic comeback, down 29. You come back in that one. You beat up on Golden State, especially in that fourth quarter. Remember Dylan Brooks going 4 of 4 from 3 in that one, in the back and forth between him and Clay, him and Steph. He was also part of holding Steph to just 16 points in that game. First time in a long time Steph had been below 20. So did a great job defensively in that one. So there was a ton of highlights in that one as well. And then you had Dallas last night. You mentioned some of the big performers, Jaren Jackson, 28 and 23 minutes, Santi Aldama, 22 and 14. So for you, like we said, 3 games to choose from. Who has brought the seasoning in your world?
I think this is a layup, easy question.
Yeah.
I think almost 3 straight 30-point games or something close, something like that. It's Jaren Jackson Jr., number 13, literally turning from a boy into a man in front of our eyes. Jaren's been a very frustrating player as a fan. The foul trouble, not sniffing around the rim, doing nothing basically but standing in the corner but shooting threes. Offensive fouls, driving to the basket. Seeing Jaren figure it out in front of our eyes has been extremely satisfying. I don't have any cool jokes or comparisons. I'm not comparing him to Salt, Paprika. I don't have any of that today. But Jaren Jackson Jr. has definitely brought it over the last few games. Coming in with 5 fouls last night and saying, give me the ball. Let's get in this game now. Get into the basket, getting the layup, going up 5, game's over. He was sensational. And I'll say this. He looked pretty bad during the moment where he let Christian Wood clearly get under his skin. Picked up 2 fouls, got a tech. He got a flagrant foul call. He just really got beside himself outside of who we think Jaren to be. I'm not mad at that level of intensity that he showed.
Me
I much rather see him be that guy than be a pushover. And Jaren kind of got that pushover, and other P words have been said about Jaren on course. We've seen guys say these things. We've heard on TV that they missed the dump button on. The guys have said to Jaren in the Minnesota series. We heard these type of things said about him. And for him to go to the level he's been going to lately, being the number 1 offensive weapon for this team, it's been exciting, man. And we talked about Ja coming back. I hope Ja recognizes that he's got a hell of a number 2 option on this team. That if you get him going early, it's going to make your night a whole lot easier, Ja. If you can get number 13 going, who's been a mismatch against everybody in the league. Anthony Davis, he's killed him. Bam Adebayo, he did well against him. Draymond Green killed him. If you get 13 going for the rest of this season, Ja Morant will make your night that much easier. As a matter of fact, Jason Smith, I got a seasoning for Jaren Jackson Jr. It just came to me while I was giving my little spiel just then. Do you know what meat tenderizer is, Jason Smith?
Yeah.
You put that tenderizer on that meat, Jason Smith. You let it sit overnight. That meat a whole lot easier to deal with than it would have been if you would have just started trying to go at that meat like normal. And meat tenderizer, it don't really got I think it's got a taste to it, maybe a salt. I don't know if it's got a flavor to it or not, but it's good stuff, man. If you got that tough meat, Ja Morant, it's hard for you to get going. Sometimes teams are game plan to stop you, and you only use Jaren Jackson Jr., that big, tall, 7-foot bottle of meat tenderizer to make it a whole lot easier. Ja Morant.
I like your season, and we'll just stick because it's the obvious answer. Jaren, I cannot believe that Brook Lopez has moved past him as the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. That continues to boggle my mind. I guess most of what he's done the last 3 games has been, the most impressive stuff has been offensively. I'm with you. It's 10 of 16 that game against Dallas. 28 and 23 minutes. The foul trouble and the tendency to still get caught up and frustrated with him, and then that leads to another one. Still frustrates you sometimes, but clearly earlier this year I was pushing over a beer to him. Remember, we were talking about, man, you need to grow up, become a man, like my dad did with me when I got 21, and that feels like what we've seen the last 4 games. It's 25. It's 25 plus 25 or more points the last 4. Right. Miami was 25 and 9 rebounds. San Antonio 28, 5 rebounds, 4 blocks. Golden State 31, 7 and 4 blocks. Dallas 28 points, 4 rebounds. Like we said, he does that in just 23 minutes. He's becoming a man on the floor. He's demanding the ball more. And you hit the nail on the head saying, I needed to continue once Ja Morant is back. I need Ja to realize that this beast is emerging. He's coming into his own right now, and to keep feeding that beast. We've talked about it, like their relationship, right? That everything that they can do. We feel like at this point in their careers, it should be a stronger tandem duo when you're running that 2-man game. Whether it's that or just throwing it into him and letting him do his thing, you've got to keep feeding Jaren Jackson at this point in his career because he is coming into his own. So I know Ja's watched it. I know he's not, his basketball IQ is through the roof. Just keep feeding the big guy, man, because he's coming on for you right now. I like it, man. I like your 7-foot bottle of tenderizer. That's what he's beating folks up, man.
Yeah, man.
He's the one beating folks up now.
Yep.
Beating other bigs up. Spin move into the lane. The offense looks good. Love what we're seeing from Jaren Jackson. You saw at the end of that game when Jaren hit the bucket with 17. I was saying call 13. Call 13. So stick with that. Hopefully they keep it going. And hopefully the last man too, I need Dylan Brooks to remain engaged, moving down the pecking order with Ja back in and moving down a little bit. Need him to stay as engaged these last 11 regular season games.
Before we leave, man, shout out to Dylan Brooks on the night off against Houston sorry ass.
Man, when it got that.
Let me go and get this check out there right quick.
Why play Houston? Who?
Yeah, let me go burn this.
Shut down with them. The man that coming off, shutting down Steph, Kyrie in the fourth.
He deserves a night off.
Don't need to play against Houston. Ain't nobody
taking that off, man. Taking that off.
You don't need my services.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to it. Hopefully, like we be 32-5 at home by the end of the week. But we'll be back with you on Thursday here on Grind Season. That's today's episode. Appreciate you guys for joining us. For Anthony Sain, for our producer, Drew Barrett, I'm Jason Smith. Remember, stay on your grind.